My name is Grace, and this is the story of how I discovered the terrible secret my husband had been hiding from me since the day we met. I met Kyle when I was 26 years old. Everyone knew who he was. He owned hotels, businesses, and properties in several countries. His face appeared in magazines. People talked about his wealth almost as much as they talked about his looks. Women noticed him the second he entered a room. Tall, handsome, perfect smile, perfect skin. At first, I assumed a man like that would never notice someone like me. I was wrong. Kyle was kind, thoughtful, and surprisingly humble. He listened when I spoke. He remembered little things about me. He never acted like he was better than anyone else. We fell in love quickly. A year later, we were married. When he carried me across the front door of his enormous mansion, I thought I was stepping into a fairy tale. I had no idea I was stepping into a mystery. The mansion sat on a hill far away from the city. It was beautiful but strangely quiet. The halls seemed endless. Some rooms were never used. Others stayed locked. On my first day there, the head maid, a woman named Mrs. Beatrice, showed me around. She was kind but serious. As we walked down a long hallway on the third floor, she suddenly stopped. At the very end stood a large black door. Unlike every other door in the house, this one had no decorations, no nameplate, no windows, just a heavy brass handle. Mrs. Beatrice looked directly at me. "Mrs. Grace," she said, "there is one rule in this house." I laughed. "Only one?" She didn't smile. "Never enter that room." I looked at the door. "Why?" "It belongs to Mr. Kyle." That wasn't really an answer. "What is inside?" Her face became pale. "Nothing that concerns you." Before I could ask another question, she continued walking. Something about her reaction stayed with me. That evening, I asked Kyle about it. He smiled. "An old storage room." "Then why can't I go inside?" "It's private." "Private enough that everyone acts terrified of it?" He laughed softly and kissed my forehead. "Trust me, Grace." And somehow I did. For a while. Years passed. Life was good. Very good. We traveled the world together. We hosted parties. We supported charities. We built businesses. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. But there were things I couldn't ignore. Kyle woke up every morning before sunrise. Always. No matter how late he went to bed. By the time I opened my eyes, he was gone. And he stayed gone until evening. I never knew exactly where he went. Whenever I asked, he would give vague answers. Meetings, business, travel plans. Nothing specific. At first I accepted it. Then I noticed something stranger. The years were affecting me. But not Kyle. At 35, he looked 30. At 40, he looked 30. At 45, he still looked 30. His face never changed. Not a wrinkle, not a gray hair. Not even around his eyes. People started commenting on it. Friends would joke about his secret. Some asked for his skincare routine. Others laughed and called him a vampire. Kyle always smiled and changed the subject. But I started watching him more closely. And the more I watched, the more uneasy I became. One evening, I found old photographs from our wedding. I placed one next to a recent picture. The difference shocked me. I had changed. Kyle hadn't. Not at all. It was as if time simply refused to touch him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at him lying beside me. His face looked peaceful, perfect, too perfect. For the first time in our marriage, I felt afraid of my own husband. I hated myself for thinking it. But I couldn't stop. The questions kept growing, and eventually they led me back to the black door. The door I had avoided for nearly 20 years. The door waiting at the end of the hallway. The door that would finally reveal the truth. Then one morning, everything changed. I woke up unusually early. The sun had not yet risen. The house was silent. As I walked through the hallway, I noticed something strange. The black door was slightly open, only an inch. But it had never been open before, not once. I froze. My heart began pounding. Part of me wanted to turn around and walk away. But another part of me knew this might be my only chance. Slowly I approached. The gap in the door revealed a flickering orange light. Candles. I could hear a strange sound from inside, a wet tearing sound. My hands started shaking. I pushed the door open just enough to see inside, and then my world changed forever. Kyle sat in the center of the room. Candles surrounded him. Ancient masks hung on every wall. Old relics covered shelves from floor to ceiling. There were statues from Africa, carvings from South America, and objects that looked thousands of years old. But none of that held my attention, because Kyle was pulling the skin from his face, slowly, carefully, like someone removing a mask. Beneath it was new skin, smooth, young, perfect. My husband wasn't just hiding a secret, he was hiding the impossible. And then, as the old skin fell to the floor beside him, Kyle slowly turned his head and looked directly at me. His eyes widened. The room fell silent. And for the first time in 20 years, Kyle looked terrified. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. I stood frozen in the doorway. Kyle remained seated on the floor, surrounded by candles and pieces of skin that looked exactly like his own. The room smelled of smoke, old wood, and something else I couldn't identify. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. "Kyle," I whispered. His face dropped, not because he was angry, because he knew the secret was finally out. He slowly stood up. "Grace," he said quietly, "please come inside." Every part of me wanted to run, but after 20 years of marriage, I needed answers. I stepped into the room. Kyle closed the door behind me. For the first time, I noticed how old some of the objects in the room looked. There were masks hanging on the walls. Ancient carvings sat on shelves. Large books covered in dust were stacked in glass cabinets. Some of the relics had labels written in different languages. Others had none at all. I turned back to Kyle. "What is this?" I asked. His shoulders slumped. "The truth." I looked at the skin lying on the floor. "The truth is that you're shedding your skin like a snake?" Kyle lowered his eyes. "It's not exactly that." "Then explain it." For a long moment he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded tired. "Before I met you, I spent years traveling the world. I know that." "No, Grace. I mean everywhere. Places most people never visit. Villages hidden in mountains. Islands that don't appear on maps. Places where old traditions are still alive." I listened without interrupting. "When I was young, I became obsessed with one thing." "What?" "Growing old." I stared at him. He gave a sad smile. "My father died young. My grandfather died young. Most of the men in my family never lived long lives." He walked toward one of the shelves and picked up an old wooden mask. I was terrified of dying. The room felt colder. "So you found a way to stop aging?" He nodded slowly, or at least slow it down. My stomach tightened. "How?" Kyle looked around the room. "Through a ritual." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. Yet I had just watched him peel away years from his body. Clearly something impossible was happening. Kyle continued. "Many years ago I met an old man during my travels. He was the keeper of knowledge passed down through generations." He paused. "He taught me things I should never have learned." "What things?" Kyle looked directly at me. "How to trade years." The words sent a chill through me. "What does that mean?" "It means every time I performed the ritual, my body became young again." I swallowed hard. "And the cost?" His silence answered before he did. My heart sank. "Kyle, the cost was time." "Whose time?" His eyes filled with shame. "My own." I frowned. "I don't understand." Kyle sat down heavily. "The ritual doesn't create life. It takes years from the future." The room suddenly made sense. The secrecy, the fear, the guilt. "You've been shortening your own life." He nodded. "Every time I renewed my body, I lost years at the end." I stared at him. For decades, I had imagined something evil, something monstrous. But this wasn't what I expected. "You mean you've been sacrificing your future to stay young now?" "Yes." I sank into a chair. The reality hit me all at once. Kyle wasn't immortal. He had simply borrowed time from himself. And now he was running out. Tears filled my eyes. How much time is left? Kyle looked away. Not much. The room went silent. For the first time, I noticed something I had missed. Beneath the fresh skin, beneath the perfect appearance, his eyes looked exhausted, like a man carrying a heavy burden. For 20 years he had hidden this from me. Not because he didn't trust me, because he was ashamed. I wanted to stop years ago, he said. Then why didn't you? He smiled sadly. Because every year I told myself I would stop next year. I knew that feeling. One more day, one more chance, one more excuse. The next year became another year, and another. Until decades had passed, Kyle stood and walked toward a stone table in the center of the room. On it sat several objects used in the ritual: candles, ancient carvings, small bowls. He looked down at them quietly. Then he picked them up one by one and dropped them into a large metal container. What are you doing? He looked at me. Ending it. Before I could respond, he struck a match. The flame touched the old papers and dried herbs. Within seconds, fire spread across the container. The room filled with orange light. Kyle watched silently as decades of secrets burned away. When the fire finally died down, he looked lighter, almost relieved. I don't want to spend another day running from time, he said. I walked over and took his hand. For the first time that night, he smiled. A real smile. Not the perfect smile he showed the world. A human one. Months passed, then years. And something beautiful happened. Kyle started aging. Tiny lines appeared around his eyes. A few gray hairs appeared near his temples. His hands became less smooth, and every new wrinkle made him happier. Because each one meant he was finally living honestly. We sold the mansion. The black room was sealed forever. We moved into a smaller home near the ocean. No servants, no secrets, no locked doors, just us. Every morning we drank coffee together and watched the sunrise, something we had never done before because Kyle had always disappeared before dawn. One morning, many years later, we sat on our porch watching the waves. Kyle looked older now. So did I. For the first time in our marriage, we looked our age. He reached for my hand. You know, he said smiling, I spent half my life trying to escape time. I squeezed his hand. And? He looked at me. It turns out growing old with someone you love is the real gift. A few years later, Kyle passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was holding my hand when it happened. There was no fear on his face, no regret, only peace. After the funeral, I found a letter he had written for me. The last line made me cry. It said, I traveled the world looking for the secret to eternal youth. In the end, I found something much better. I found you. And as I sat looking out at the ocean we had shared for so many years, I finally understood. The greatest mistake Kyle ever made was trying to live forever. The greatest decision he ever made was choosing to be human again. And because of that choice, he didn't just live longer, he lived better. And that was the ending neither of us expected, but both of us needed.